Andrew, I tried to show that this is not just an outrage and unlawful for the many reasons that have been mentioned. It's not really a settlement. Congress has to appropriate funds. The president can't just raid tax dollars and then give out money to other people. Right. But that above all that, it also fits with an effort to revive the failed coup.
I was listening to you. I was listening to how impassioned you were, and I agreed with everything that you said about this. There are two lanes. I'm usually here to talk about the legal lane, but the way that this can be stopped in the easiest way is for Congress to actually do something. Mm-hmm. And we have seen them do that for the Federal Reserve when they thought that there were unfair attacks on their independence. We have seen public reaction with respect to what this administration was doing in Minnesota, and the administration, for political reasons, in terms of public outcry, having to pull back in the face of the murder and shooting of 3 people there, in addition to a whole series of abuses. If Congress wakes up and does something, and if it's needed, in response to people saying this is, as you said, not just, in my view, theft of $1.8 billion, but the use of that money then for completely political and illicit purposes, to me, that this is the moment for Congress to do it. There will be lawsuits. I mean, right. That's the other track.
But you're saying it's interbranch. You don't have to wait. You don't have to defer. You go and you say, no, this is not what we ever appropriated. We showed one of the Republicans walking down the hall saying, no, we're going to kill it. And there's so much rhetoric about democracy. I just want to say something obvious that gets forgotten. They tried to kill members of Congress.
Exactly.
You would think by self-interest alone, Congress would think long and hard about funding that crew of violent people who are roaming the streets, feeling immune and lawless. Now they get extra money and are emboldened for the future. By self-interest and protection alone, wouldn't Congress want to act swiftly?
Yes, but they also look, and if you have Republican members of Congress, senators and members of the House saying, I don't want to be primaried and I want to keep my job. By the way, I'm not saying that as a defense. I'm saying that their self-interest becomes aligning themselves. But it also is one where they may be able to act en masse in the same way we saw with respect to the Epstein files. But part of that, for people listening to this, is Congress very much reading the room and getting a sense of what is the level of public outrage, because they will respond to that, or at least hopefully they will, in the same way you've seen it in other circumstances. To me, that's the remedy here for the immediate term, so that the courts will get involved. There will be lawsuits. There was one today, but I think there will be many more.
Yeah, and Todd Blanche, I've mentioned, has the fastest slide of anyone who's been in that job, acting or permanent, I've ever seen in covering this. Here he was failing to rule out because apparently he thinks his boss is going to want funding violence. So here he was.
Will you agree to encourage those commissioners to set a guideline that compensation will not go to individuals who are convicted of assaulting police officers?
I expect...
Just a yes would answer my question. Or no?
Yes will not answer that question. I mean, you're asking whether I will encourage. I don't think that's a fair word. I don't think it's the Attorney General's job to encourage commissioners to do or not do anything.
So, I mean, that's so anti-police, soft on crime, anti-blue lives, everything else.
Absolutely.
And he, as a lawyer, he tries to get into talking about commissioners and technicalities. That's not what anybody... If you ask the Attorney General, hey, I know you got this complex plan. Will any of this money go to terrorists or al-Qaeda? No, of course not. Will any of this money go to the people convicted of sedition and attacking police? Should be a quick no. It wasn't. What does that tell us?
Well, one, he is not getting ahead of the president. Remember where we were before the beginning of the second term, and we heard from Pam Bondi and from J.D. Vance essentially, don't worry, in the pardons, we're going to do triage. Don't worry, the people who are violent, those are not the people.
Yeah, we did hear that, yeah.
And then, of course, what happened? Mass pardons for everyone, even the people who are serious violence and criminality. So this is one, not getting ahead of the president on that. But two, it is the most disingenuous thing to say, oh, this isn't my job. The commissioners will decide that. You are the acting attorney general of the United States. You set up the fund. You don't have the ability to put rules in place. Of course you do. It is so, I'm just going to say it's sickening to see that when you are a public official, you may not like being asked questions in Congress. You may not like oversight. If you don't like it and you're not willing to do it, don't take the job. You are required to give information and truthful information and respond to questions politely and respectfully, like an adult, in something that is this serious. And there's absolutely no recognition. It feels like a sort of sycophantic, immature response with somebody who is really not taking the responsibilities to the public seriously in responding to what's going on.
Yes, and I think the reason why this is an alert for people to understand is this is how they're acting now. If they are desperately trying to hold on power because Trump, who has corrupted many people around him, has Blanche also worried about being investigated or disbarred, the last desperate measures will relate to violence. There will be false indictments. There already have been. And the public is going to have to figure out, just as we saw in Minnesota, how you deal with that. It's not a fair fight, but there are more law-abiding democracy believers in this country than those willing to do that violence. It was a very effective, I have to say, but as an observer, but small number of people relative to the American population that stormed the Capitol, right? And so it may also be, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it may be that if you don't trust the federal officers under Donald Trump to protect the sixth certification, that a lot of other peaceful people come to surround the Capitol. I mean, we've seen this in other countries.